was a long break between rounds 1 and 2 of the 2019 SACCS, but in the middle of May, South Africa's most spectacular motor racing series was back in action at the Berg 400, set near the KZN town of Winterton. All the highs and lows of the race are brought to you by Toyota, Ford, Total Quartz and Pirelli. Welcome to the Drakensberg, arguably one of the most spectacular places in the country, and the backdrop for round 2 of the 2019 SACCS, the Berg 400. This was a new location for the SACCS, and the DSP and Race HQ were set at the iconic Waffle Hut on the R600 between the town of Winterton and the spectacular Champagne Castle. This time of year, the Berg is known for its crisp, clear days, and it was no exception when the SACCS rolled into town on May the 17th. Not that it was all shiny, happy people in the pits, mind you. Cross-country racing is a serious business, and for those with championship aspirations, every round counts. Speaking of championships, let's take a quick look at how things stacked up after round 1 of the season. Early days for sure, but even so, stealing an early March could swing the entire season in your favour. And that's exactly what defending champs Chanel de Villiers and navigator Dennis Murphy did when they took the honours in Mpumalanga during March this year. The pair topped the standings with 35 points, 7 clear of teammates Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings, who narrowly missed out on the win in Dahlstrom. This Navarro driver, Ernst Roberts, finds himself in 3rd, ahead of Namibian teammate Jaco van Dijk. Chris Visser rounds out the top 5 in Class FIA, and the Burley farmer will be hoping to improve on that at the Berg 400. Class T sees the two Woolridges top the charts, with Lance leading Gareth early in the game. Gary Berthold is in 3rd place, with the Horn brothers in 4th and Jacques van Tonder in 5th. The Class T battle is sure to heat up, however, as Gareth Woolridge won't be in action at the Berg 400. This could give his brother even more of a lead if all goes to plan. Dave Huddy was the sole runner in Class S and therefore scored maximum points as a result. Over on the special vehicle side of the championship, it's big Lance Trithui who stole an early march on the championship, whilst Tahir Masaji finished in 2nd place last time out. Johnny T is in 3rd, with the only female driver in the championship, Sandra Yonk, in 4th. John Thompson rounds out the top 5. The Mpumalanga 400 saw Werner Mostert take the honours ahead of Jerry van der Bijl, with Ash Bradbury in 3rd and Peter Walter scoring points for 4th place. We took a moment to catch up with some of the key players just prior to the start of the Berg 400, and one man who had a bit of a blinder last time out was Tahir Masaji. The youngster failed to qualify in Dahlstrom, but then blitzed the field by finishing in 2nd place at the end of the race event.
Yeah, we're hoping to, keep it clean for this time trial, just try to keep it on the road and try and get a good finish.
But he would be facing stiff competition in the form of Lance Trithui and Adrian Rutz, who proved their pace and tenacity in the past. To make the task even more daunting, Trithui was a man with a plan.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, time trial's going to be a bit difficult, I think, with the long grass and that, but obviously to try and push as hard as we can and then just get a good starting position for tomorrow.
The man from the Ford Castrol cross-country team, Lance Woolridge, had an equally pragmatic view on the upcoming race.
Yeah, I think everyone says hometown advantage, but we'll have to see how that goes. It's going to be a race we're going to have to, I think, let unfold a bit.
The Ford driver was well aware of the constant threat from Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Hilux. But then the Horns had a fairly rocky start to the season, and Johan was cautious not to make any wild predictions for the Berg 400.
First time we're racing in Winterton. Yeah, we don't know what to expect. We're going to try our best.
But the Horns wouldn't be the only Class T crew pushing for position in the prologue. As a matter of fact, Atlas Copco's Gary Berthold finds himself ahead of the Malalan crew on the log and was looking forward to racing in the beautiful Berg.
Yeah, fantastic close racing in Class T, and I've got my work cut out for me today, but I think this Atlas Copco Hilux is hungry to get to the front, and as long as I can keep it in shape and my navigator can keep us on the right route, we'll be up there.
But perhaps the tightest battle of all was the one between the two men at the top of the championship standings, Chanel de Villiers and Henk Ladergan. De De Villiers drew first blood by winning in Mpumalanga, but Lottachan wasn't going to take it lying down, despite the challenge of new terrain for the Berg 400.
So there's no clear plan before. I think we're just going to go enjoy it.
As has become the norm over the past few seasons, it's the youth of Lottachan versus the experience of De Villiers, and the wily old fox was excited to get to grips with the tracks offered by the mountains of KwaZulu-Natal.
I think it's going to be challenging. You know, new terrain's always challenging, and if you look at all the grass and everything that's around here, I think you'll have to be wide awake, especially tomorrow in the main race.
So those are the players, and here is the chessboard. The Berg 400 was set in the pristine valleys between the Drakensberg and the N3 highway, with the race HQ and DSP set at the iconic Waffle Hut on the R600 just south of the KwaZulu-Natal town of Winterton. The race would be contested over 3 runs, starting with a qualifying race of 55 kilometers, then 2 race loops of 162 kilometers each. This time round, the qualifying race would take place over the closing section of the race loop, which meant that crews would launch into an unknown section of the route for the main event, adding to the challenge for the race leaders. Even though this was a new race on the calendar, plenty of supporters came out to watch all the action. The SACCS and Total also donated 200 pairs of shoes to a local primary school. And then it was time for action. The proceedings started with a ceremonial flag wave-off at the DSP, but crews had to drive a non-racing section of 25 kilometers to the start of the qualifying route. This gave them a moment to settle the nerves, focus on the task at hand, and then go hell for leather into the unknown. The route turned out to be a stern test this time, with extreme tricky terrain and sections of long grass that made it near impossible to find the route at any kind of pace. In Class A, Championship leaders Lance Trathui and Adrian Roots continued their good form by dominating the qualifying race for the special vehicles. The big man was happy with his results, reveling in the tough conditions and building an advantage of just under 2 minutes over the total agri porter of husband and wife pairing, Jaco and Sandra Jank.
It was very tough in the beginning, you know, with the marking and that. And Adrian did a good job on the notes and that, and we had a good one.
The ever-cheerful Sandra, who took over driving duties after her father Kutsia retired from racing at the end of 2018, enjoyed the fast sections of the route, but was frustrated by the challenging navigation, which may explain why she got her navigator husband, Jaco, to tell us about their performance.
Yes, it was quite a lot of fun. It was challenging out there, but the car ran like a dream. Sandra did very well. So despite what we thought, the route I think actually suited us and went quite well, yeah.
Third in Class A was the Bat Warbird of John Telford and Victor Nsheki, who suffered an intercom failure on the start line. The pair then had to rely on their own sign language, which they've developed over many years racing together, and managed to stay in the fight as a result. They would start 35 seconds behind the Yonks, but more than 3 minutes ahead of the Voigt brothers, Ralph and Andre, who reported a great run. That until a left rear puncher cost them 6 minutes near the end of the stage. Podium finishers from round 1, Tahir and Tyler Masaji, had a great start to their qualifier, but then their striker developed brake problems before suffering electrical failure, forcing them to retire once again from the prologue. This may not bode well for their race, but a similar situation at the Mpumalanga 400 saw them take second place despite starting from the back of the field. Class B saw only one entry complete the qualifying race, in the form of Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey in their Zarko Magnum, who reached the finish line in a time of 50 minutes and 27 seconds. The side-by-side category saw Ash Bradbury and Henry Kerner triumph in their Can-Am Maverick, posting a time that sees them 3.5 minutes clear of Dakar hopeful Jerry van der Velde and navigator Andrew Kate. The G66 Can-Am Maverick of Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers were a further 21 seconds adrift in third place, beating Klaas Stallwoods, Werner and Leon Mostert by 8 minutes after the latter pair struggled to find the start of their qualifying loop. In Class T, it was the Ford Castrol cross-country teams, Lance Woolridge and navigator Ward Huxtable, who set the pace in their Ford Ranger.
We're going to go through a gate and then around a house. Then as we pass the house, we're going to do a 90 right and then a left through a gate.
The Italians posted a time of 39 minutes 20 seconds, placing them not only third overall in the standings, but also, importantly, 1 minute 30 seconds ahead of arch rivals Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Hilux.
The prologue was certainly by no means easy. It was really, really tricky finding the route. There was lots of open felt and very difficult to find, and at times dangerous as well. You know, big holes, rocks in that felt.
Third in Class T was Atlas Copco's Gary Berthold and navigator Jeff Minott, who might have posted a faster time had their fire extinguisher in the Toyota Hilux not triggered by itself. Veteran racer Berthold, who has now competed in excess of 100 cross-country races, managed to retain control of the car and ended the qualifier half a minute down on the Horn brothers ahead of them. Brazilians Marcus Boomgaard and Kleber Cincia in the second Ford Ranger beat Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlingays to the flag, after the latter pair got lost on the route and hemorrhaged time as a result. Richard Leek and Donnie Stassen also lost time after their wipers on their Ford Ranger failed midway through the race, forcing the pair to stop 4 times to clear their windscreen. The final runner in Class T was Vos Prinsloo and Kenneth Venter in the Ford Ranger, competing in their first ever national event. Representation in Class S was restricted to a single car in the form of David Huddy and Gerrit Skitter in Dennis Navarra. The pair completed the qualifier in a time of 49 minutes and 30 seconds, placing them 20th in the overall standings. And so onto the lads at the head of the field, the battle in Class FIA. Despite a number of overshoots and struggling to find the route in the long grass, Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Chanel de Villiers and navigator Dennis Murphy emerged victorious at the end of the 57-kilometre long qualifier. The pair posted a time of 38 minutes 36 seconds, beating teammate Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings by a slender 14 seconds.
You know, really difficult with the navigation. Some places, not some places, I think half of it, in grassy fields where there's no tracks, no roads, and really difficult to find the route. So, a bit of heart in your mouth stuff, because you're 4th, 5th gear there, and there's dongas left and right, and rocks and everything. So, that was very, very difficult.
Ladegan and Cummings, for their part, managed to stay in touch with the more experienced pairing ahead of them and were clearly planning on an all-out assault for the main race. The young driver also had some thoughts on the route overall.
I think Brett got thrown into the deep end properly there. Just it tested everything. It tested the navigation, the driving. We had a few moments where we didn't know where we really were, if we were on the route at all.
The Class FIA podium was rounded out by Atlas Copco's Chris Visser and Phil Herselman in their Toyota Hilux. They went 4th fastest overall after suffering power steering problems midway through the qualifier, pushing them wide on the tight corners. Behind the top 3 came a gaggle of Class FIA competitors, all reporting difficulties finding the route and coping with the often challenging conditions. Shamir Variawa, alongside Jean Moore in the 3rd Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux, set a blistering pace early on, but got stuck in the dust of slower competitors midway through the stage, ending up 4th in class as a result. Behind the Toyota crew, Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson recorded a clean run in their Alfa Renault Duster, whilst Namibians Jaco van Dijk and Michael Rust in a Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara seemed to find it difficult to get to grips with the conditions in Winterton. The Class FIA scoreboard was completed by Schalk Burger and Alvin Kutsia, Terence Marsh and celebrity navigator Lesego Zulu in their Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara, and Dubai's Thomas Bell and navigator Patrick McMurran in a similar car. As for Zulu, this was her 2nd outing with Marsh, but no amount of experience could prepare her for the rough Berg 400 route.
It was intense. It was really rough. I thought I was a tough chick. This time round I didn't take anti-nausea tablets. Tomorrow I will be taking anti-nausea tablets.
Spare a thought for Redline Motorsports' Ernst Robertson and Rand Kreiling, who failed to complete the qualifying race after hitting a gate post with interest, ripping the front wheel off their Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. They would start the race from the back of the field. A quick look at the leaderboard after qualifying confirms that it was de Villiers and Murphy who took top honours in Class FIA, with Lottegan and Cummings in second and Visser and Hurselman in third. Class T saw Woolwich and Huxtable go fastest once again, followed by their arch rivals, the Horn brothers. Third place went to Atlas Copco's Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott in their Toyota Hilux. Trathui and Ruitz dominated in Class A, with Sandra and Jaco Jonk posting the second fastest time. Big John Talford and Victor Nsheki were third fastest. Ash Bradbury and Henry Kerner went fastest in the side-by-sides, with Jerry van der Bale and Andrew Kate in second, Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers in third. Before we continue with the story of the Berg 400, we'd like to share a bit about a very special visitor who came to South Africa to test the Dakar-winning Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux.
Well, I came here to South Africa to have the opportunity. I had the opportunity, thanks to Toyota and Gazoo Racing, to test the Dakar winning car on the last Dakar. And yeah, I've been testing different series and different cars in the last couple of years, and it's a great opportunity to try test something very different of what I'm used to drive. And yeah, I'm curious to jump in the car to see how it goes. And yeah, this. The next 20 minutes is going to be some tense.
The double F1 champion has never driven anything so high off the ground in anger. As a matter of fact, his behind has never been more than a couple of inches above the tarmac when competing. And the Class FIA Toyota Hilux is a completely different beast. So it was our very own defending champion, Janelle de Villiers, who had to show the Spaniard around the test track in the Northern Cape.
You know, I can't teach him how to drive. He knows very well how to drive himself. It's just a case of he's got to get used to the car. He's got to get used to the terrain here, learn to read the bumps, learn to read the way how you go over the dunes, because that's something obviously he's not used to.
Yeah, it felt different, definitely different, and yeah, but interesting. Obviously, the car accepts a lot more punishment than what I'm used to have, but yeah, it was quite good fun.
After a quick orientation lap, it was time for Alonso to take the car out for a spin himself. But he needed someone to point the way, and that dubious honour fell on the shoulders of Dennis Murphy, the man who won the overall SACCS title beside de Villiers last season. The F1 driver was extremely professional at the test and slowly built up his pace whilst finding his feet. It was clear immediately that he could definitely pedal a car, exhibiting raw natural talent that is bellied by his small stature and quiet demeanour. Once he started working his way through the gears, hitting the jumps at the right pace and trusting the brakes to slow down the big monster Hilux, he upped the pace lap after lap, eventually circling the pan in times that can only be described as highly competitive.
It felt okay, actually. I think yeah, we built the speed a little bit slowly, lap after lap, and yeah, getting more confident. Obviously, still, especially the bumps, you know, difficult to read how high they are and how much speed you can carry on. But yeah, the car feels great, very good grip, good balance, good power, and braking as well. So everything feels amazing. So really happy.
Alonso had been quite open about his purpose of his visit prior to the test. He wants to test and compete in a variety of disciplines, and the Dakar Rally is high on his bucket list. As a former member of Toyota Gazoo Racing's WEC squad, racing the Toyota at Dakar would certainly make sense, but the Spaniard wasn't keen to make any predictions or commitments after the session.
I feel great. It has been definitely an evolution from myself from the very first run to now. I think the track also it keeps changing. It's not the same with the sand and with the gravel. Still, you know, you make some grooves and you still need to adapt. You know, so every run that we do is an improvement from myself and a new track that I discover. So you know, it's a never-ending learning at the moment. So happy with the experience. The car is just amazing. zero problems, even if you treat it quite bad, in my opinion, in the bumps. But you know, these cars are made for this, so I'm very, very happy.
While the prospect of Fernando Alonso, the Fernando Alonso, competing at Dakar in a proudly South African-built Toyota Hilux is undoubtedly a tasty one. The fact that he came to drive one of the cars that regularly competes in the SACCS bears testament to the standard of our series. Admittedly, we've seen a number of international drivers in South Africa over the years, but very few of them carry the weight of someone like Fernando Alonso. As for his future plans with the team, we know nothing more at present, but we'll certainly keep you posted. So there you have it, a small Spaniard with big plans, as well as an update on our championship and a lowdown from the qualifying race for the Berg 400. Join us again shortly as we bring you all the action from the main event in the Drakensberg.
Welcome to Sydney Cricket Ground for the match between Australia and South Africa. South Africa officially back at international level after all these years.
It was something that we could only dream about. Being part of that very first ICC World Cup in '92 and going to Australia and New Zealand was something immense. I was just hoping one thing would happen. It's for us to bowl first, because this nervousness needs to get out of my system. I think we lost the toss, but we were in the field and just running out there and leading up to that first ball being bowled. It was immensely nervous and very tense, and then the rest was history.
We're going to join it now with the very first ball.
Ball on the top, got him first ball, yes, he's got to be out, huge appeal. My goodness, that looked as if there was a reflection there that South Africans cannot believe it.
To bowl that first ball and to have Jeff Marsh smash the white leather off it and Dave Richardson catching him behind, it could not be more wrong than that.
The umpire down at that end, given that first one not out, what a beginning that would have been.
The disappointment was there for everyone to see. Everyone was so wound up.
I thought it moved a lot off the seam, and it looked like to me as it was a big edge there, and the ball went off the wicketkeeper who took it cleanly. That was David Richardson. That's a big let down for Donald.
These clips and moments that I personally was involved in will forever be entrenched in my memory.
And there it is. Victory by 9 wickets to South Africa in this World Cup match. The South Africans on debut after 21 years have thrashed Australia at the Sydney Cricket Ground.
It's history. It was a privilege to be part of that team, that group. Being part of that squad is forever be a feather in your cap.
Welcome back to the outskirts of Winterton in the shadow of the majestic Drakensberg Mountains. After a cold start to the morning, the temperatures were slowly rising as the crews prepared themselves for what was surely going to be a hot and tough day of racing in the first ever Berg 400 cross-country race. The dramatic Drakensberg proved a beautiful backdrop to the far west of the designated service park, but the action on race day would take place further east between the towns of Winterton and Escort on the other side of the N3, which connects Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. On the cards were 2 loops of the same route, consisting of 163 kilometers of varying terrain that included all sorts of obstacles. It was described as a nightmare by some, while others called it a perfect balance of what proper cross-country racing should be, with a string of river crossings, dongas, mud, jumps, grass and everything else that Mother Nature could throw at the more than 30 crews who all had aspirations to conquer the course and their competition. At exactly 7:30 on the Saturday morning, competitors lined up at the DSP in the order they'd qualified the day before, to be waved off by the ceremonial flag. The real race, however, started 30 minutes down the road, some 30 kilometers to the east. As the crew who qualified in pole position the day before, it was up to reigning SA champions Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy to open the road, and exactly 2 minutes later, it was time for Toyota Gazoo teammates Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings to also drop the hammer behind the wheel of their Class FIA Toyota Hilux. Class T leaders Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable were the next ones off and into the unknown in their Ford Castrol Ranger, followed by the ultra-quick pairing of Chris Visser and Phil Herseman in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, and the second Class T car in the form of the Horn brothers from Malalan. At the front, the unenviable task of being the first car on the road quickly took its toll for race leaders Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy when their Toyota Hilux picked up a puncher. This allowed teammates Lottegan and Cummings to close right up, but in the dust of their teammates' Hilux, they hit a tree stump which also led to a flat tyre. It was an eventful wheel change for Lottegan, who after changing the front left wheel, discovered that the right front wheel was on fire. They did, however, manage to extinguish the flames and continue without further incident for the time being. Behind the fight, the Class T battle was also heating up. Champion Lance Woolridge was the first to flinch with a puncher just 5 kilometres into the race, handing the Class T lead to arch rivals, the Horn brothers. But this too was short-lived, as important suspension and steering parts inside the Malalan Toyota Hilux gave up the ghost. They managed to perform a roadside fix, but lost more than 20 minutes along the way. A clear picture of what the standings were only became available after the majority of the field completed a fair amount of the distance of the challenging race route. Everyone knew that it was going to be difficult to first find the correct routes in the long grass, and secondly, survive the many obstacles that this beautiful part of the country had to offer. As the picture started to emerge for the entire field, it became evident that Class G champion points leader Werner and Leon Mostert were on a move. Unfortunately for pole setters Ash Bradbury and Henry Kerner, they failed to reach the DSP, which allowed the Mosterts the opportunity to charge through the entire field and into the lead of class by the end of Loop 1. They had a relatively comfortable advantage over the identical car of Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers, who reached the DSP in second position, around 25 minutes ahead of Dakar hopefuls Jerry van der Bijl and Andrew Katay. With the first half of the side-by-side battle completed for now, the attention shifted to the Mad Maxes of cross-country racing, also known as the special vehicles. Here, in Class B, fans were hoping to witness a battle between pole setters Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey, and the popular pairing of Keith McInerney and Tote Bereng. But sadly, this didn't materialise, as McInerney was forced to retire his bat from the action during loop number 1, leaving the path clear for Gosler and Massey. But it's here in Class A of the special vehicle category where we will find the big machines with big wheels and serious power. And it's also here where Clint Gibson and Navi Boyd Dreyer set a blistering pace in their striker. They were second fastest of all the specials on loop number 1, but a slow qualifying the day before meant they were still only 4th on the overall standings. Third, despite a number of issues, were the wife and husband pairing of Sandra and Jaco Jonk. When Sandra was asked what went wrong, her reply was everything. The intercom failed early on, the GPS failed soon after, and husband and Navi, Jaco, got car sick in the Total Agri Porter. So third, at this halfway marker, was actually quite an achievement for the top lady driver. They weren't the only ones having issues, as John Telford and Victor Nsheki had a similar tale to tell. Their story also consisted of a failed intercom system that led to a number of wrong slots and overshoots, but even so, the Bat Warbird reached the DSP in a provisional second position. But the man on a mission was Big Lance Trathui, partnered as always by Adrian Roots. The Bat Venom set the fastest pace of all the special vehicles during the qualifying the day before, but that wasn't enough for the Big Natalian, who set an even faster pace during the first few kilometres of Loop 1. Trathui not only went quickest of the specials, but was fastest of all the cars in the entire race at this point, proving that he really enjoyed a tough challenge such as this. The result? A rather comfortable lead of 11 minutes in the special vehicle category at the halfway marker. So that's how things stacked up in the special vehicle and side-by-side category after 200 kilometres of racing. Over at the production car end of the field, the action was equally intense. David Huddy with the very experienced Gerrit Skitter in the hot seat of their Nissan Navara were the only competitors in Class S. But Huddy also had a good overall position in mind and drove his Navara fast and safe to arrive at DSP, now inside of the top 15 overall. But let's move up a notch into the very competitive Class Ts, where the fight was raging as always between Toyota and Ford. Youngster Richard Leake and veteran Navi Donnie Stassen were flying early on in their Ford Ranger. They were the second fastest in class before they got hit by a puncher and then broken wheel studs, brought what looked like a great race to an abrupt end. Equally unlucky was the fast Atlas Copco Hilux of Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott. The stalwarts of cross-country racing showed good pace early on by leading the class, but lost all power steering just 41 kilometres into the loop. He had no choice but to throw in the towel for Loop 1.
We had a 10-second lead into the stage. We were going comfortably. So really a great story that unfortunately didn't pan out the way we hoped.
This meant that following their earlier setbacks, the Malalan Toyota of Johan and Werner Horn was classified as the last finisher in Class T at this stage of the game, but they still had half the race to run. The Horns would have a gaggle of Class T cars to pass on the second loop, including the ex-factory Ford Ranger of Vos Prinsloo and Kenneth Venter, who were having a successful debut outing on a national event. They completed Loop 1 in 4th position, just 2 minutes slower than the similar-looking Castrol Ford Ranger of visiting Brazilians Marcus Boomgaard and co-driver Kleber Cincia. The pair reported a clean run over the first 200 kilometres of the race, despite taking it perhaps a bit too easy over the terrain that is vastly different to what they are used to. The Class T leaderboard at the halfway marker was an all-Ford affair, with yet another Ford Ranger making up a provisional podium position. The Berg 400 is a close-to-home race for the Harry Smith-based pairing of Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis, who had a fairly clean run as far as cross-country racing goes. They reached the halfway mark in 2nd position, around 2 minutes ahead of the Brazilians. All that remained for Loop 1 was to determine who the class leader would be. That was an easy problem to solve, though. It was the Castrol Ford cross-country Team Ranger of Natalians, Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable, who reached the DSP on the outskirts of Winterton with a commanding lead of around 8 minutes, and this despite picking up not 1 but 2 flat tyres en route to the DSP. In the words of his co-driver Ward Huxtable, a navigator was much more than just a passenger on this challenging day. But let's hear from Woolridge himself about how it all went.
Yeah, look, it's been, I've hated it, to be honest. It's been a terrible first lap for me. I got a stupid puncture in the first 4Ks. We crossed the railway at an angle and clipped the wheel. And then at 25Ks, another puncture. So just stupid mistakes from our part and very frustrating.
The Berg 400 was proving to be a tough race, also taking its toll on the Dakar specification Class FIA cars. Some were fighting for survival, some didn't manage to make it to DSP, and some were racing as if their lives depended on it. So let's count them down. The Alf Renault Duster of Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson were unfortunately forced to the sidelines after the steering rack in their steed refused to cooperate any further after hitting a ditch.
When we went through that ditch and we just within an instant second the power steering was gone. I blew both seals on both sides. We tried to get it for about from 40 Ks to 68 Ks. And my arms are sore after 28 Ks. It's horrible to drive this thing because you're fighting something that's 50 times as strong as I am.
It was an equally frustrating day for Chris Visser and Philip Herselman in their Atlas Copco Hilux. Visser is a former champion and one of the fastest drivers out there. But if it wasn't for bad luck, you could say that he currently has no luck at all. The Northwest farmer was forced to the sidelines and would no longer take part in the race. The FIA class certainly proved its popularity here in Winterton, with a host of race machines from different manufacturers, all occupying spots on the leaderboard. Next up were a string of Redline Motorsport Nissan Navaras. 2019 Dakar finishers and regular visitors from Dubai, Thomas Bell and Patrick McMurran, were currently lying 7th on the FIA standings, a few minutes behind the identical car of Ernst Roberts and Rian Grayling. Roberts is most definitely impressing in only his 2nd season at the sharp end of the sport. And speaking of the sharp end, someone who knows exactly what it takes is Scott Berger, along with former champion navigator Alvin Vonk. Berger has raced all sorts in his career, but he is now on a mission to go to Dakar, and every kilometre behind the wheel is used in preparation. The Berg 400 also marked the 2nd South African appearance for the Namibian crew of Jaco van Dijk, affectionately known as Chucky, and co-driver Michael Rust. Chucky was both clean and fast on Loop 1 to move into 4th position on a very competitive Class FIA leaderboard. And this is why that leaderboard is so competitive. Reaching the DSP in 3rd position is the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux of former special vehicle champion Shamir Variawa and Jean Moore reading the notes. Variawa is also back from competing at the Dakar 2019, and the man is determined to make his mark on both South African as well as international soil.
This morning we went out, we knew we were 7th on the road, and I just tried to get the rhythm going as soon as possible, and we got that rhythm going, we clicked, we gelled, and away we went.
And finally, you didn't have to be a race expert to work out the overall leader at the halfway mark would be a factory Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. But which one? Teammates Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings in the number 300 car were battling it out with Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy. The lead had swapped several times as both cars ran into troubles and punches of their own with the end of loop number 1 in sight. And it was Ladergan who pipped his illustrious teammate by a mere 50 seconds. It was a fierce battle that between them included 4 flat tyres and 1 Carsec Navigator. And that was only after loop 1. Time to take a breather and get the confirmation of the standings after the first half of the race then. In Class FIA, it was Henk Ladergan with a 50-second advantage over teammate de Villiers, Shamir Variawa in 3rd and Van Dijk in 4th ahead of Scott Berger. Class T was all about the Ford Rangers, with Lance Woolridge in command. 8 minutes in front of Jacques Van Tonder with Boomgaard and Prinsloo in 3rd and 4th respectively. The Horn brothers had it all to do in Loop 2 from 5th place on the leaderboard. Huddy was the only runner in Class S, but was climbing the board. And a quick look at the special vehicles, where Lance Trathui dominated up front ahead of John Telford and Sandra Labuschagne-Jonk. Clint Gibson was the last runner now in Class A. Class P belonged to Nick Gosler, whilst the Mostards fought their way to the top of the current class standings in the Gs. It was a mighty performance so far from the big man in his even bigger Bat Venom, whose name was right at the top of the special vehicle standings. This is what Lance Trathui had to say.
Yeah, it's good. We had to hammer down this lap, and I'm really enjoying it. And it suits my driving style, suits the car. It's fast flowing, and yeah, we're really enjoying it. It's nice.
And it was a ding-dong battle between teammates de Villiers and Ladergan at the very front of the field. There were clearly no team orders in the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA camp, as the wily old fox de Villiers and the young protagonist, Ladergan, were battling not only each other, but also the tough terrain and obstacles of the Berg 400.
Extremely tricky to find the road, and even the last section was the qualifying route of yesterday. It was still difficult to find the road there at some places, so you can imagine how difficult it was this morning with no tracks. So really tough out there.
And although he held the overall race lead, it was far from plain sailing for Henk Ladergan.
I think Janelle had a puncher right at the beginning, so we caught him. So he was sitting in his dust for quite a while. We were just hanging back there, and then we managed to catch up to him. We were really close to him. And then in one of the sections, really bumpy section, we saw him go over a few bumps, and I hit one of the bumps, flew in the air and landed on a log. So we got a puncher there.
And that's it from the designated service park in Winterton for now. If Loop 1 of the Berg 400 was anything to go by, you most certainly can't afford to miss Loop 2. See you after the break for all the action for the second half of the Berg 400.
What a perfect way to start off this World Cup, and against the old foe England.
Wow, what an atmosphere there is in this ground already. The first big game of the ICC Cricket World Cup.
This time he goes straight. That is a magnificent shot. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's a beauty. Wow. That is a statement in itself.
It's time to fuel the fire. Don't miss a second of the 2019 ICC Cricket World Cup. Catch all 48 games live on your World of Champions. This broadcast is brought to you by Nissan. Innovation that excites.
This June, stay connected on Supersport on DSTV with Protea Fire, African Pride and world-class football. Enjoy June with the ICC Cricket World Cup, Total Africa Cup of Nations, FIFA Women's World Cup, US Open, HSBC 7 Series and Vodacom Super Rugby. Brace yourself this July for horse racing, center court and Girl Power. Enjoy July with Vodacom Durban July, Wimbledon and the Vitality Netball World Cup. This August, be prepared for big hits, tee-offs and fast cars. Enjoy August with The Ashes, WGC Bridgestone Invitational and Formula One, only on Supersport on DSTV.
Welcome back to the Berg 400, round 2 of the 2019 SACCS. So far we've seen plenty of thrills and spills in the race, but there was one more race loop to go and plenty of action still to come. After regrouping at the DSP near the town of Winston in KZN, it was go time again for the crews in the SACCS. Time to tackle the final loop of the race and hopefully reap some rewards or lick some wounds on the way home. The side-by-side category is enjoying its status as a national race class, and competition within the category is fierce. With early leaders Ash Bradbury and Henry Kerner removed from the equation, it was up to the 3 remaining crews to duke things out. In the end, it was Jerry van der Bijl and Andrew Kate who pegged the 3rd step on the podium after racing for a total of 6 hours, 32 minutes and 3 seconds over the 2 days of the Berg 400. Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers ended up 36 minutes and 37 seconds ahead of van der Bijl and Kate, earning 2nd place in the process. But the biggest mover on the day was side-by-side stalwarts Werner and Leon Mostert. The brothers recorded a poor result in qualifying after struggling to find the start of the route, but steadily clawed time back during loop number 1. Loop 2 saw them leapfrog their competition, and they finished a slender 55 seconds clear of the 2nd place crew.
It was hard today, it was tough today, we had to work very hard, it was very rough, but yeah, we managed to win through, so we're very happy with the finish.
With McInerney and Berg having ended their race on loop number 1 due to clutch issues, all that Nick Gosselin and Andrew Massey had to do in order to score maximum points was finish the race. They did just that, recording a total race time of 5 hours, 48 minutes and 9 seconds. But the real drama lay further up the field, where the thunderous Class A cars were battling it out for the top steps of the podium. With that said, Big Lance Trathui went into the 2nd loop with a healthy margin of 11 minutes, so all he had to do was stay out of trouble until the end, which is exactly what the Bat Benham driver, together with navigator Adrian Roots, did at the Berg 400. 1st place and the 2nd win on the trot for Trathui and Roots.
No, it's good. Still a long year to go. I mean, we've got the desert to come. So that's double points, which is also, we've got to get to the end. To win, you've got to get to the end. But today, the main focus was just to go as fast as we could, and we did, and I thought we did well today.
Remember the 11-minute lead Trathui had going into loop number 2? Well, that grew to nearly 25 minutes over the 2nd place crew of John Telford and Victor Ncheki during the latter part of the race. The Bat Wallboat crew recorded a clean run after their dramas on loop number 1, but simply couldn't match the pace set by Trathui. The Class A podium was rounded out by Sandra and Jaco Jonk in the ex-Philip de Vries Porter. The wife and husband had plenty of upsets during the opening loop, but restricted their drama to 1 broken throttle cable on loop number 2. The Berg 400 was anything but plain sailing for the Total Agri crew, but 3rd place on a tough day is still worth plenty of points. Clint Gibson and Boyd Dreyer in a striker was the only other Class A crew to complete the full race distance. In Class S of the production vehicle category, David Huddy and Gerrit Skitzer had an excellent run in loop number 2. As a result, the pair drove their Nissan Navara to a finish in an overall time of 5 hours, 36 minutes and 3 seconds, placing them ahead of a number of crews in classes FIA and T, another stellar performance. And speaking of Class T, there was disappointment for veterans Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott after they incurred a massive penalty for not completing loop number 1. But then on loop number 2, they posted a time of 2 hours, 16 minutes and 5 seconds, clearly showing their pace and proving something of a point in the process. Unfortunately for them, the point was mute as they ended as last runner in Class T. Significantly higher up the leaderboard, Brazilians Marcus Boomgaard and Kleber Cincia were classified as 5th place after incurring a 10-minute penalty for missing a stop at a road crossing. Had this not happened, they would have finished in 2nd place, but that's not how the rules work. Still, a solid performance for the Ford Castrol cross-country crew. Vos Prinsloo and Kenneth Venter in a Ford Ranger, driving in their first ever national event, placed a creditable 4th with a total race time of 5 hours, 29 minutes and 52 seconds. Not bad at all, especially for the first outing. Now we get to the sharp end of the Class T field, and it was here that Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis really impressed in their Ford Ranger. The almost local lads posted a race time of 5 hours, 29 minutes and 31 seconds for 3rd place, clearly showing their championship aspirations. Just over 2 minutes ahead of Van Tonder and Redlinghuis came the Horn brothers, who fought their way back after a torrid time on Loop 1. Unfortunately for the Malalan Toyota Hilux crew, their woes on Loop 1 put them smack bang in the middle of the field, stuck in traffic on Loop 2. Despite this, the brothers reaped the rewards for 2nd place, ensuring they stay in touch for the championship. This meant that the spoils for the 2nd time on the trot went to the Ford Castrol cross-country teams, Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable in their Ford Ranger. The pair also recorded a clean run in Loop 2 and finished 17 minutes clear of the Horns. It was a near-perfect performance, marred only by the 2 flat tyres suffered on Loop 1.
In 100 meters.
This brings us to the final class to discuss. Arguably the most spectacular class in the country, and certainly one where the battle for honours was raging like a wildfire in Winterton. But before we get to the podium for the class, let's take a quick look at the rest of the field. After a solid performance on Loop 1, Skalkberger and Alvin Vonk were unfortunate to lose 2 hours on Loop 2 after clipping a rock 30 kilometers in and damaging the steering rack and the sump. After a struggle to repair this, the crew continued to the end. This gave them 8th place in the standings. A cruel end to a good race, but for Berger, his eyes are fixed on the Dakar Rally, and any seat time is good time. Ahead of them, celebrity navigator Lesego Zulu helped Redline Motorsport Terence Marsh bring their Nissan Navara home in 7th place, 14 minutes behind teammates Thomas Bell and Patrick McMurran in an identical car. Ahead of them, Namibians Jaco van Dijk and Michael Rust brought their Nissan Navara from the same outfit home in 5 hours, 45 minutes and 58 seconds, 38 minutes ahead of Bell and McMurran, despite finishing the race on just 3 wheels. The Namibians were on a charge on Loop 1, going 4th fastest behind the factory Toyotas, but a flat tyre, overshoot, getting stuck and plenty of dust saw them slip down the order to 5th in class come the end of play. The final crew to finish outside the podium was that of Ernst Robertson and Rian Kreiling in yet another Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. The pair showed exceptional pace on Loop 1, and were it not for a flat tyre and a small rollover in Loop number 2, they may have well been nipping at the heels of the podium spots. In the end, they finished 34 minutes shy of the podium, but it was still a good, solid performance. and so onto the podium positions. New Toyota Gazoo Racing SA signing Shamir Variawa was in only his second outing for the team. To make things even more difficult, he started the race with a low seeding and had to work very hard to make his way up the leaderboard. This he did steadily though, battling dust in loop number 1, but making up time hand over fist on loop number 2. So much so that he went second fastest on the second loop and finished in third place with a time just 2 minutes off the number 2 position. Speaking of second place, that position went to Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy after an eventful second loop. Remember, the pair were trailing the leaders by 50 seconds after loop number 1, but a gargantuan push saw them take the lead briefly, only to lose it again when a bolt on Murphy's seat sheared off. It was back to max attack, however, only to be thwarted by power steering issues near the end.
We caught up to Henk and Brett. I think we were about 25-30 seconds behind them in the dust and leading overall, and then unfortunately we had a power steering failure. So to do 30 k's without power steering, which was quite tough. These cars are not easy to drive without power steering, but you know, this happens. It's the name of the game.
This meant that the class and overall victory at the Berg 400 went to Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Henk Ladergen and navigator Brett Cummings. The pair had plenty of ups and downs of their own during the race, but in the end their performance sealed a first victory for Cummings in only his second race with the team, and second overall victory for Ladergen. It was a fine drive from the youngster, who took the win by 4.5 minutes, ensuring that the battle for the championship remains tight between them and their teammates.
Like halfway through, I think we were making up some time, and then we got a puncture. I actually hit one rock with both the right wheels, and when we stopped to change it, I saw a massive bubble on the rear tire. So we decided not to change it and take a gamble. But then I was taking it easy not to get a puncture further on, and looks like I was taking it too easy because the guys watching were telling me I was losing a lot of time. So Janelle was actually ahead at some point, I think, and then unfortunately for them, power steering went. So a bit lucky, but awesome to finally get the victory.
And that's it for the action from the Berg 400, and here are the numbers. Class FIA saw Ladergen and Cummings pip de Villiers and Murphy for the win, with teammates Variawa and Moore in third. Two Nissan Navaras followed in the form of Roberts and Grayling and Van Dijk and Rust. Class T belonged to Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable, with the Horn brothers reaping the rewards for their second place. Third went to Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Reglinghuis, whilst Huddy and Skitter were the only runners in Class S. Chathui and Roots totally dominated in Class A of the special vehicles, with Telford and Nsheki finishing in second place, ahead of the Yonks. Class P saw Gosler and Massey take the honours as the only runners in category. Finally, it was a tour de force for the brothers Werner and Leon Mostert in the side-by-side category, with Walter and de Villiers in second, and Van der Bijl and Katay in third. As the sun set over the Drakensberg, it was time for the podium finishers to spray the bubbly at the Berg 400, and there was plenty to celebrate. For Werner and Leon Mostert, it was the fact that they'd managed to dig deep after a disappointing qualifier to come through and take the side-by-side win, their second on the trot. Chathui was another man with plenty to celebrate, after he totally dominated proceedings with a flag-to-flag victory. Navigator Adrian Roots hanging on for dear life whilst reading the notes. The Class T battle is already shaping up to be a hairy one after Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable made it 2 wins for 2 on the start of the season. But they couldn't increase their lead by quite as much as they had hoped, thanks to the Horn brothers stalking them in second place at the Berg. But probably the guys with the biggest smiles were the overall winners, Henk Lauderdam and Brett Cummings. A second overall victory for the young driver and a first victory for his newly minted navigator. And on top of that, the pair are now tied with De Villiers and Murphy for the championship, which certainly bodes well for the future. And speaking of the future, next up, it's the big one. The one with hair on its chest and its name, the Toyota Kalahari Botswana Desert Race, which will be contested at a new location near the town of Selebi Piquet in Botswana. This race takes place at the end of June, and remember, it counts for double points as the only marathon event on the calendar. Whatever you do, you don't want to miss that one. We'll see you there. That wraps things up for the Berg 400, and all the upsets and thrills were brought to you by Toyota, Ford, Total Quartz and Pirelli.